Without too much further ado, we can start with our afternoon session. And again, just a confirmation, Gordon on the Gatineau side is present, yes?
Yes, I am.
Good, great, good stuff. I would, our speakers don't need too much introduction, although I will start with Gordon on the Gatineau side. It's Dr. Gordon Deecker is the Senior Advisor at the Canadian Centre for Geospatial Data Management. He'll be joining us, obviously, in our panel discussion from the Ottawa side, from the Gatineau side. Our other speakers, you know already from our previous discussions, except for Mr. John Bowers, who is joining us from MDA, a company which I think was mentioned, I didn't count, I think probably 50 times today. And we have Alexander Kaptein, we have Dr. Thomas Weißenberg, and Dr. Christian Steimle. Thank you, everybody, for joining us in the panel. I would like to begin the panel with a little bit of background, a little bit of history. We've been presented today with some fabulous information on the current status of what's going on in space-related industry. It hasn't necessarily always been quite as interesting and as exciting. In the 56 years since Sputnik 1, we have continued developing new space-based technologies and infrastructure at an accelerating pace. Today, all countries that we've mentioned today, Europe, Canada, many others, have become hugely reliant on space for the functioning of our economies and our governments. These crucial dependencies expand regularly and now include telecommunications, broadcasting, banking, navigation, weather forecasting, agriculture, land management, climate monitoring, disaster relief, to name just a few. That list, as we've seen today, could obviously be completely expanded to be comprehensive. However, even as it provides huge benefits, space flight, space exploration, space activity remains challenging, risky, and expensive. Traditionally, it was governments who took the lead in developing and validating new technologies, services, and even applications related to space. Governments assembled the teams, governments planned the programs, assumed the risk, and provided the funding. Of course, governments were fully supported by industry and academia, but it was the governments who ponied up the cash. In its time, this model worked well, and we achieved much success, also as we've seen today. But in the current fiscal era, we're witnessing a massive change in how space programs are undertaken and funded. And commercialization of space is a growing reality. We are faced with challenges. What are the challenges inherent in the commercialization of space? Where do the opportunities lie? Are they in hardware, software, applications, services? Probably all of the above. Why should citizens support this new space paradigm, this new way of doing things in space? What role, if any, will there be for the traditional space organizations and public agencies? And which role can be played by transatlantic and in particular Canadian-German cooperation? That's my challenge statement to our panelists. And I would now like to invite each of our panelists to take, you have a microphone, and please, if you could, I'd like to invite you to provide a brief 2-minute reaction statement in response to my introduction. And we'll just go in order. We'll start with Dr. Thomas Weißenberg.
Thanks a lot. Well, the questions you rose, they're absolutely right and important. In my point of view, one of the main challenges, at least in Germany, is to stimulate the demand of public, in brackets, civil customers. That's much better, well, not organized, but it works much better in Canada, as the framework conditions are completely different there. But from a German perspective, I would be glad and happy if there would be a much broader public demand of Earth observation services and other commercialization aspects. another aspect as a challenge is to find a balance between public investments in hardware and technologies and the private service business. In other words, to look for new innovative structures to enable private companies to cope with the high initial investments which are necessary to to provide services such as Earth observation services. You asked about what are the main opportunities. I think in order to broaden the market and hence the revenue of the companies, services absolutely is the key. Not only Earth observation scenes for experts, but for a much broader, user community. And you mentioned the aspect of the public awareness, how to cope with any perceptions by the public or by citizens. I think space research and space applications are still being seen very positively in the general public. However, the public seems to be not completely aware of how their daily life depends on space technologies and space infrastructure. And this is something where the space agencies and politics has to work on. The role for public research and technology institutes and agencies, still that's basic and applied research that supports industry. That's a task of DLR as a research organization. We don't do research and science just for the fun of it, but in the end we have to serve the public and German or the international industry, and that's why we do that. So another aspect you mentioned, Canadian-German cooperation. This, won't be the key, but I see German-Canadian cooperation in space, and especially the aspects that have been mentioned by our colleague Alex Kaptein. This will serve as a great example. All the collaboration which is already being carried out, but there's much more to come, and we just discussed it briefly. This possibilities which lay in the area of X-band and C-band combination, data fusion. This will be great, and there are still some steps to go, but if this works well, this will be great for all of us.
Great, thank you very much. I would like to now pass over to Christian and ask the same to him if you could provide your brief response statement.
Well, yes, I completely agree to your points, Mr. Weißenberg. A very big challenge is that space business is business. So, talking from the launch service provider viewpoint, why has there not been a single launch system completely developed in a commercial contract without any subsidies? We use an old Russian system, an old Soviet system, so do others, and then you quickly come into the position where you need public funding, because launcher business, space business is extremely risky and nobody really wants to take the risk. Then next point is, you said, and I totally agree to this, we take for granted what we take as benefits from the space business. But if you would ask people to pay for a GPS signal that they receive, nobody would be willing to do it because it's there for free. So there's a big hurdle we have to overcome on the technology side, but also in the minds of people, that they are willing to invest into space, to take the technology into the next step, that they are really eager to use all the space applications which are out there just to develop. And on the other hand, yeah, that also companies take the risk for the next step in technology development. Without the two, mankind will just live on as it has done until today. But I think with the climate change, with population increase, with all the challenges of this century, we need the space business. And now we come to the opportunities of it. It's like the next, it's Space 2.0. It's the next generation of space. We come from the agency, from the research-driven, more to the application-driven era. But that doesn't mean that the agencies don't play a role. They have supported the commercial space business very much. And I think without this, considering all the risks I mentioned, we won't get any farther than this. But still, you should take some risk on the commercial side, and people are hesitant to do it right now.
I might just jump in and add that on the day, actually during the actual launch, the ascent of the first SpaceX mission that was actually going to dock to the ISS, Elon Musk, in his private Twitter account, tweeted, it looks like a success, and we absolutely could not have done it without NASA. So that's interesting.
That's the point. I mean,
recognition. Yes.
We all, including myself, do admire Elon Musk and SpaceX. It's a wonderful story. Everybody is also a bit envious of this company, yes. But we must not forget NASA put significant money for them.
Right. Good. Thank you very much. We'll pass over to
John Bowers.
Yes, John Bowers. No, what? No, I'm just looking at my list. I just realized my list of names does not match the list of how you're seating. So, okay, pass over to John. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much for that introduction. And I think a couple of points. I agree with the other panelists here, and I think your introduction was spot on. Times are changing, especially in the space industry. Maybe the term Space 2.0 is the relevant term. In some respects, we have a platform, we have a heritage, we have a long experience in Sputnik, but there's still much to be accomplished. In terms of, from my perspective, my experiences in the Earth observation business, with regard to sort of primary challenges in that business, I think it's about establishing a sustainable business model that enables us to make a commercial business of Earth observation. This means delivering services that meet real customer needs, and by that I mean providing real information to customers that they can involve in their operational scenarios to make real decisions. So it's not just a case of providing imagery, it's a case of providing information. As Alex pointed out in the presentation earlier, it's much more interesting to know the location and the heading of a ship than it is to look at a fuzzy, hazy, snow-covered image. The challenge in delivering sort of sustainable business is the high cost of putting satellites on orbit. And so the good news is that there are many EO satellites available, and that leaves much opportunity, I think, for some of the people in this room to take advantage of those satellites being available to deliver value-added services. What kind of opportunities are there then? In my mind, the opportunities exist throughout the value chain. We've had an interesting cross-section of speakers today, talking, ranging from antennas, launch providers, satellite manufacturers. I see opportunities across the value chain, but especially in the services or value-added part of the value chain. I thought the EarthCast presentation was particularly interesting and innovative, and shows that we're in the process of exploring how people can take advantage of the data that's available from Earth observation satellites in different ways. And so I see that there's many opportunities to take satellite data, perhaps combining data from multiple satellites in a clever way that provides real information to end users. If we do that, you raise the question, why should citizens support this new space paradigm? Well, I think what will happen is as we, as a community, as a group, put our minds together to deliver this real information, then citizens will naturally want to take advantage of that information. If it's geospatial, if it's location-based services, if it's video, then citizens will be persuaded by virtue of the fact that such services exist. And then, in terms of collaboration between Canada and Germany, I think we've got huge potential. As we saw today, there's many ongoing interactions already. There's collaboration at the government level. There's various framework agreements established. At the agency level, we talked about CSA and DLR and CCMEO and their arrangements to work together. And then in industry, MDA is always open and very interested to work with other partners. We're exploring, as Alex Kaptein pointed out, we're exploring possibilities of sharing radar know-how between TerraSat and RCM program. So there's a lot of potential to collaborate. What role would traditional space organizations and public agencies play? I think a continuing role, an important role. We rely on agencies to set national policy, national frameworks, and also we rely on these agencies to interact and have bilateral agreements. We also look forward to their guidance in terms of and support for research and development, which will help us create these necessary new developments in technology and solutions. So, in conclusion, I think it's a very exciting time. I think there's lots we can do, and collaboration, in my mind, is a big part of that, because together, you can use the term 1 + 1 = 3. Alone, we may be able to deliver quite effective services, but if we work together with each other, I think we can provide much more.
Great, thank you. And I'll pass over now to our second last panelist, Alexander.
Well, why should I, as a taxpayer, be interested in a space commercialization? Well, first of all, competition is making pricing more efficient. Why should I pay more than I need? As a company, I may not like it. It's better to be a monopoly player. From a long-term taxpayer perspective, we will not survive in space industry if there's no competition here. That provides efficiency and that drives innovation. A second question, if I look into the Earth observation part of the business that I, for sure, is the only one I may understand, really, is why should I, as a country, pay for a whole space system? Germany is a very small country, not to mention Canada, which is really big. Now, why should Germany be so crazy to buy 2 radar satellites just to look at this small country? And then I hear from you, Thomas, the public doesn't really need it, which is clear, because to use and look at all these small infrastructure in Germany, you don't need a satellite. You may need an airplane. So why should I want that as a taxpayer? That's a waste of my money. I would heavily object to that. So then I would have 2 options to reduce my investment as a taxpayer. I could tell my government, look guys, do some government-to-government bartering. You give some of these nice X-band data, you get back from another nation some nice C-band data. That bartering approach is a common one on science data. That's what nations do. Everyone has got nice, fancy science satellite flying around, and you exchange data. That's fine. Now here we look into operational systems. And also here a lot of G2G bartering is done. That's typical for the defense systems. You have a secret system, I give you the data from my secret system. But for a non-classified system, is bartering really efficient? Bartering means a few G2G arrangements, 2 or 3 nations involved. And the rest of the system is left idle. So bartering, in the end, is probably a very archaic concept. We've been doing that since millions of years, probably. That was the first way of trading goods. In the meantime, someone has invented money. So using money on commercial markets, that would mean a broad access to these data sets and to these means. Then you commercialize. You give it a price, and everyone can access it, not just the few nations you like best. So from that point of view, commercialization of Earth observation was a good idea. And Astrium, which is a very risk-averse company, as you know, and that loves to be nourished by space agencies, for sure, took the very crazy decision to invest into 2 satellites, TerraSat and TandemX, together with DLR. And it's a huge amount of money. It's a 3-digit million euros investment that was done. And now we're sitting here about 7 years after the first bird was launched and ask ourselves, my God, how shall we earn that hell lot of money back? Because in the meantime, something very unfortunate happened. We were the only ones to commercialize. All other nations decided to go the other way. They pay their systems 100% by the state. RCM is funded by the state, 100%. Cosmo is funded by the state of Italy. The European Commission did something great. They paid for the satellites 100%, and our satellites colleagues loved that. Now they give the data to the market for free. I may not love it to that extent, because how can I earn my money back if the data is free and if others can do whatever pricing they want, because they are not forced to earn an investment back? So that puts a big question marks to the issue of commercializing Earth observation data. If you're the only one to do so, and the rest of the market doesn't work like that, it's a bit awkward. So in the end, the finding is it's not hopeless. At least this is what the business cases show we believe in. But the precondition is to have a major anchor customer, and that is typically a national anchor customer, that either through a data agreement or through investment guarantees that a major part of the system is funded and covered. Whereas you can only earn back a limited amount of such an investment in the market across the globe, because the free systems will cap your price that you can take there. So that's the game we're in here. And this is why we are struggling so hard with the German government over the next generation. What's the right business model? How much industry investment can be earned back? What is the new role of the German state here? Is it a technology funder? Or should we really try to achieve something that other nations have achieved successfully, like Canada, to have operational national use of such a system, which would for sure be the best way ahead? So this is the situation we're in. So you ask the right questions. We may have the right answers in next year, hopefully.
Great, thank you very much. I'd like to pass along finally to Gordon over in Gatineau and ask him for his initial response statement.
Okay. Thank you very much for allowing me this opportunity to speak. And thank you also to Dr. Weißenberg for his kind words with respect to the Canada Centre for Mapping and Earth Observation. I also note that I'm the only public sector speaker on this panel, with 4 people coming from the private sector. So I'll take this opportunity to emphasize that my views are my own. The errors and omissions are my own as well, and not those of the Canadian government or of Natural Resources Canada. You gave us 4 questions, and I'd like to answer them quickly and then get on to a little rant that I have. The first one is the challenge in commercialization. I see 2 challenges. One was mentioned just recently, and that was competition. One challenge is that this could lead to monopolies, where the big companies get bigger and the small companies get shut out. Another challenge is education. As we move to the private sector, if education is seen as a public sector responsibility, it may also get left behind. Your second question was opportunities, are they in hardware, software, applications, or science, services? You missed one, none of the above. Because I believe that the biggest opportunity is by making data available, accessible, and affordable. It will lead to opportunities in all of the above. Why should citizens support this new space paradigm? There are obvious reasons. Weather forecasting has improved enormously over the time when I was a little younger. GPS I can now use to find myself We actually used systems like Google to figure out how to get here from home. Increased communications. This particular video between ourselves and Germany is reliant on commercial technology. There are many other technology spin-offs as well that will come from this. So that's reasons for citizens to support it. The fourth question was the role of space agencies, and I haven't heard it mentioned yet, but just recently there was the Emerson report for the aerospace industry, and that is a significant report that recommends some mandates for the future for the space agency. That report was widely accepted by both government and industry, and it is currently on the internet if people want to read it. So I'll steer clear of that one. But one public sector concern that is ongoing is both security and privacy in the new world. You asked about a private company that we may think is good stuff. I had Google until Wade Larson spoke, and now I've switched to Earthcast. But the rant is education. I have 3 stories. Well, we all know of Commander Hadfield from the International Space Station, and we know of his significant efforts and successes in relating the space station and space to Canadians and the world. In one of his stories, he tells us that it was his son who convinced him that some of that stuff was possible, and in fact, helped him set it up. His sing-alongs, for example, of Ground Control to Major Tom. The second story is Doug Bancroft, who was the former DG of CCRS and was well known as a hands-on expert in ICE services. He told me one day that he was absolutely flabbergasted by the work that his son had done in mashups as part of his university course, taking bits and pieces of data from here and there, including Earth observation data from Landsat. Last one is more personal. As a PhD from 1974 in computer science, I was clearly an expert for many years. And then I found that recent Bachelor of Science graduates in computer science knew a heck of a lot more than I did and could apply it to much better than I could. And I certainly couldn't go back to school and keep up with them, so I switched to management. Well, these examples are perhaps best summed up by the adage, if you can't use the TV remote, let the 8-year-old do it for you. And in fact, if you ask the 5-year-old, he'll tell you, Dad, TVs are passé, why don't you just use your computer? So our children must be allowed to experiment, and we need to figure out how we, public, private sector consortiums, whatever, can ensure that we can make data available, affordable, and accessible in the educational system. And lots of people believe that that's remotely sensed or Earth observation data as open data. Mr. Larson is a proud proponent of that. Alexander Kaptein said that RadarSat data complements TerraSAR data. Can we give them both to university students in classroom projects and allow them to experiment and show us the new applications, the new technology, because in the long term, these clearly are systems where data will be available in the long term. The technology and the growth in applications need to be kept up. And it's the universities that are the hotbeds of experimentation. So we are also looking with Alexander to figure out how we can make the TerraSAR data available in an educational environment as opposed to a research environment or a commercial environment for use in a university, Trent University in Peterborough, Ontario. And we have a university digital map librarian spending a 6-month sabbatical on understanding how best she can provide data, at the same time protecting the commercial value of that data, but allowing it to be more readily used by students and based on a data liberation initiative that Canada's had since 1992, where data like statistical data from the census is being used so that Canadian students can use Canadian data for Canadian projects. And that's the end of my rant.
Great, Gordon, thank you very much. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your first round of responses. I'd like to take a quick, all of which are extremely well put. I'd like to take a moment and open it up to the floor if there are any questions, either on the Gatineau side or here in the embassy, before we carry on with our next round of panel comments. And there's one comment at the back. Now, if you could tell me your question, I'll speak into the mic because we're out of portable mics. Right. Right. I'll just jump in there. So the comment is that actually GPS is a very good example of how initially government funded, government owned, and indeed security protected information is now now widely, not only widely available, it's widely used and widely exploited. Oh, hang on just a minute. I think we do have one spare mic. Is that one working? Oh. Ah, thank you very much. Good. Good. Okay. Yes, now you can carry on. So hold the mic a little closer and you'll be all set.
Yeah, so you could have a global waste management company hoovering up all the debris in space, right? There's a private initiative, for example, right? But in terms of data, as Gatineau just said, make it freely available.
Right. Okay, are there any comments on the Gatineau side?
Yep. Again, I think we have to overcome, when it comes to Earth observation, and yeah, again, okay, that is my background, I have to admit that. But when it comes to Earth observation and maybe also other future uses in space or of space technology, I think we have to overcome a big hurdle, and that is that we are not only well known in the public, and as Gordon just said, the one initiative to get data out and get the experience, new experience built with the next generation is very important. At the same time, next generation, Gordon, is way more, let's say at least another 10 years until they're really in business, so to speak. So how do we get it to the public right now? That is a question I would have also for the panel here. We could say yes, as government agencies, it's our duty to make that public. But at the same time, what is everybody else in the industries at the value-adding sector doing to get the knowledge into the public? What you can really do with those data. Alex already mentioned, okay, we have to get information out of it. So did John. But how do we make the public aware of what are the true potentials and what are the true limitations? So you not get stuck at one end with people saying, oh, we already use space technology, we all look at Google Earth. Now, okay, question is, you're looking at a picture, what do you take from it? On the other hand, you have maybe false expectations, like radar can look into the ground for 30 meters and tell you the basis for climate change, which is a total over-expectation. So how do we get in between and really educate the public, and then also stimulate the small and medium-sized sector to be in a position to actually provide locally and regional value-added services? How do we do all that?
That's an excellent comment leading into a question. Indeed, I'll use that to kick off our second round of panel reactions. And the question previously drafted was, could you please describe an example of commercialization of space that impresses you and give a reason why? And that, in light of the previous comments, maybe this is a good one to start with. And I'll again, we'll start over with Dr. Weißenberg.
Well, I think we are all aware that telecommunications is a very positive and a positive example of commercialization of space technologies. But however, I have to admit that in all other areas, it's not that easy to find, let's say, these big examples. It has been mentioned already that in Earth observation, let's say in the launcher business, it's still the public or the government that requests the services. And in this regard, it's not that easy to, well, to find a good to find a good example. The government either invests in developing the technology, like we did together with Astrium with regard to TerraSAR and others. The same applies for RadarSat 1, 2, and 3, or RadarSat Constellation mission. Or the public acts as the customer of the services, especially in the military or security areas. The same applies for launch services. Here, I think 80, 90, you probably know much better. 80 or 90% of the launches are being carried out for the public or for public customers. Yeah, I'm a little bit helpless to give very good examples. Maybe industries has another perspective.
Great, let's pass over to Christian.
We talked already about SpaceX. I mean, okay, they get public money, but from public viewpoint, you could also say they developed a launch system in no time compared to all the other launch systems, which costs much less than the one that was available. It's a sad story with the space shuttle, but still the goal was for NASA and also the US taxpayers to get a cheaper launch system, and they got it on a commercial basis. Of course, you had to invest and you had to cover the risks, but still, this is, for me, very impressive how they did it. They tweaked around the business completely. They came from what we currently do, from cooperation between companies, between parts of companies scattered around the US. We do it scattered around Europe. They came to one factory, one workshop, where they have assembled all they need, and they never subcontract. And thereby, they really do their development in no time in comparison to what we do on the cooperative basis. For me, it's a new concept. It's really what I'm impressed about.
Great. Thank you. Over to John.
I think, Dr. Weißenberg, you had the same thought that I did. And really, the only real example that I can think of or I can look to is the satellite communication industry. I mean, there was an industry that no doubt started off with government funding in the early days, but quickly moved to a very successful sort of commercialization model. MDA itself has a huge branch and a huge interest in that industry. A huge part of our business is delivering communication satellites, and there's literally a production line of those communication satellites being produced. Other companies are doing the same. So I think that is the successful example, and then I also struggle to see how we move into that 100% commercial model. I can only suggest, as has been mentioned earlier, that it's through innovation, it's through stimulating the need, and it's through exploring different kinds of applications, different kind of uses for the data that will generate demand.
Thank you. And over to Alex.
So I was most intrigued in terms of commercialization about the ideas of EarthCast, but also of Geodan when it comes to crowdsourcing in evaluating the data that result maybe from a low-cost, free data set. So if we can attract consumers that like to look into these data for curiosity, or even better, to do something good in a not-for-profit environment, like the deforest action we saw, or support in cases of crisis, that's a great business model. That would result probably in revenue streams, who knows, from sponsors who want to support that activity, or maybe from advertisement if this is seen as a big enough consumer customer base, as we see it from the Googles of this globe. But the question is, would that be really a model, a role model for all Earth observation? I doubt it. I think that could work for small satellites and for things that are not too expensive. In the end, these systems will not serve the public need wherever we perceive the state to be in charge. It's not my private interest to monitor ships around Canada. I expect that the Canadian state is doing so. It's for sure not my personal interest to map land cover in Germany to improve regional planning. I expect that the state agencies are doing so. So for this public services, and this is for which the big systems exist, because you need a lot of coverage and revisit, I don't think a fully commercial approach would work, because we miss the consumer base. It's a few public customers in the end. Nevertheless, we will look much more at Astrium into these small models, like EarthCast, like Berlin Space Technologies, that work without DLR money, that work without public money. Because the question is, do they take away our work? Or are we just two big dinosaurs that will die out because we are risk adverse, we are not moving quick enough? Well, the first lesson learned from the Copernicus Masters, where I had the pleasure to evaluate concepts like EarthCast or Geodance crowdsourcing, is yes, we are dinosaurs, we are not quick enough when it comes to developing services or clever business ideas. We are much too slow in implementing them and testing them. So I think it's really good for this industry if there's a new generation of small and quick companies that have good ideas that can attract venture capitalists instead of state agencies to test, because if you've got venture capitalists on board, you've got also the right to fail. They may fund 10 or 20 concepts, and they make their money when one prevails. Astrium, as a big dinosaur, may fund 2 or 3, and if they fail, it will just close that business unit or sell it to someone else. So probably to be innovative, you need to think outside the box and outside the dinosaurs. But this is my private opinion, and as Gordon said, speaking as a member and an employee of Astrium, this is totally private and does not represent any opinion of Astrium, Airbus, or however they will call this company in the future. Thank you.
Noted for the record. Gordon, over in Gatineau, do you also want to add something at this round of response?
Sure. Well, I'd like to thank the other 4 panelists for supporting my point of view. They talk about innovation, stimulation, and exploring. They talk about small and quick companies, and they talk about big companies being risk averse. The university students of today will be the 3-person companies of tomorrow. They will be small and quick companies. They will be nimble. Give a slightly different example, not using space, but using space technology. The new bus systems around Ottawa now use radio telecommunications to pass back and forth where the bus is and what its next stop is, and that stop is then announced on the bus for all the passengers. Some kids and other people saw that the databases for those things were available on the net, and they generated applications literally overnight so that you could do a text message and find out when the bus would really be at your bus stop, not when the transportation company said it was according to their schedule. The transportation company initially took the databases down because they said, oh, they beat us. We were going to make that a commercial application. They're now readily available, and it's a free service. So I think it's not the 10 years that Wolfhard predicted. The students are a bit more nimble. They're graduating students, typically. They've got to find a job sooner or later, and finding a job as a quick, small company doing things that they're intellectually stimulated by will drive this industry.
Thank you, Gordon.
That's my comment.
Thank you. Again, I'd like to open up the floor for questions, either on the Gatineau side or here in the embassy. And yeah, we'll just pass the mic to Matthias.
Commercialization of space, I would say, starts with affordable access to space. And I'm very happy that Christian brought up the example of SpaceX, because this is quite interesting. I remember a presentation that we had at our site at Astrium Space Transportation in Bremen. Somebody was talking about all the successes and about this very successful company offering for much lower prices affordable transportation to the ISS, having modules docking to the ISS, and basically extrapolating whether we could keep up with these competitors. And then there was a very interesting remark from the audience saying, well, I know that NASA was actually waiving a lot of security, or rather safety requirements on the flight hardware for SpaceX, which ESA would never allow us to do for the automated transfer vehicle, which is also docking to the station. And this reminded me of something which I heard this morning during our field trip to Berlin Space Technologies. Tom Segert made actually the exact statement when he said, well, we are producing, well, I would say commercialized products for space by using components which are actually not space approved, and they're assembling them, and by this they can offer them for cheaper prices. But his statement also was, we cannot work for the space agencies because they have these Q&A and product assurance regulations which would require that we're spending most of the time going through the process and not building the product. So my question actually probably to Mr. Weißenberg as the representative of the space agency on the panel. How do you see this is actually evolving in the future? If we, on one hand, want to have safety in space, but on the other hand, we want to have affordable solutions to go to space.
Well, yeah. Let me maybe first start. We are glad that that companies like Berlin Space Technologies exist, enter the market, and will probably compete in the future with the dinosaurs. The question regarding to find a balance between safety in space and affordable access or affordable space services, well, it's a good one. I think that governments, being represented by the space agencies, as well as private companies like the big telecommunication service providers, they are a little bit, probably not a little bit, they are very conservative concerning how do I get back my investment, either the public investment or my private investment. Companies in the telecommunication market, they have to probably, I'm not an expert, but they get credits in order to invest in a new satellite and so on. And from this perspective, the satellites, the experiments, they have to function. Because once something is in the orbit, there's no chance to, well, to repair it. Well, maybe there are some exceptions like Hubble, but then you need a space shuttle and some additional investments. So if you, as a state or as a private company, if you send something into the orbit, you want to make sure that it works. And for this, you need space qualified products, components, and so on, and that makes it very expensive. On the other side, as a space agency, we encourage, we support companies in developing new innovative solutions, and we support them in let's say, I'll be finishing in a second, and we support them to space qualify their new components. I don't know if the extent is large enough, but at least that there are programs on the national level, on the European level, to support smaller companies in order to bring up new ideas and cheaper solutions as well.
One more reaction, Chair. Just a minute, though.
I would like to make another comment. I mean, we should not beat too much onto the heads of the dinosaurs, because talking about reliability. No. It's just a general remark.
You promised not to quote me, I think.
When it comes to creating a sustainable business, and you cannot rely on your technology, then normally, okay, you could accept that you have to replace whatever technology you use quickly. In space, this is very, very difficult. So if you come into the position that you launch a very cheap system into space, but it's not reliable because it's cheap, there's a close relationship between the one and the other, then you run into the big commercial risk. It's not only a question of safety and so on, it's also a commercial risk that you lose one satellite and then you never come into the positive part of your business plan. So in the morning at BST, I heard it was, for me, very interesting, a completely different concept. The nanosats, you accept that they don't live too long. But I heard a lot of sentences like, oh, we were lucky enough that this one survived 8 years or 5 years. But in a sustainable business, you have the classic hockey stick curve. You expect some revenues. Then you have the market taking on data or whatever product you sell. But you're depending extremely on the reliability of your spacecraft. If this is not there because it has been too cheap, then the business is gone. So really, the commercialization of space is a challenge, because you have to use very reliable, very expensive technology, and it takes a long time to pay them back, and it's not so
without any support. So that's, cooperation plays a major role, and and the same applies for the guys from here from Berlin, space technology. That's just great, and I expect a lot from the current discussions between Astrium and MDA. We will see what will be the result next year probably, but I have a good feeling. So that's my last word.
Good, thank you very much. Okay, good way to end it, with a good feeling. Good. Well, Christian?
Well, I do share the good feeling, though. For me, it was also very impressive to see the Vertex example, which shows you that if someone has something and the other one has something to offer to that someone, you come into a very productive cooperation. But it also comes down to the culture of the people involved into this process. And I believe that between Canada and Germany, there's a lot in common. There are many differences, but we can use those differences, and we can use our the strategic position of both countries, Canada especially because it's affiliated in space to the European Space Agency, as well as the NASA in the US, we can use those relationships and our cultural, what we share as in the personal culture, to produce many more of those examples. But it also depends on what we are capable of inside our own country. So we cannot only rely on the cooperation, we have to be good ourselves.
Great, thank you. Passing over to John.
Yeah, today we've seen many examples of capabilities on both the German side and the Canadian side. I think it's great to see all those capabilities. I think the Canadian-German partner, with that context, a Canadian-German partnership could serve as a catalyst in many cases to either accelerate or improve the offering or the solution that we're able to provide into the market. So we take the Canadian capability, the German capability, and put it together and deliver something better. So I think the idea of partnering, certainly from MDA's perspective, is very appealing. I also recognize that in Canadian intergovernmental relationships between CSA, DLR, and other agencies are also present. So it seems like that can aid in general in the commercialization.
Thank you.
Well, 2 sentences, that's not easy. And I had them, I think, now. No, the radar part of the Earth observation market we've been talking about is not really a market yet. It's very small, and it costs a lot of money and time and effort to make it a global market. So we've got 2 options. We can fight like hell for the little budgets that are around there, trying to kill each other, or we can join forces, investing in a more intelligent way into building a global market that will sustain a larger industry. So intellectually, I would tend to go for that second, more intelligent approach. In real life, of course, we are aware there is a bumpy road ahead, because there is companies, there are salesmen with targets, and they simply are there to sell what they have, not thinking strategically, but making today's business. So I think it will not be easy joining forces, but it's worthwhile to follow that road and be sustainable for some years here to make it really a success. Thank you.
Thank you. And Gordon, over on the other side, your 2-sentence response.
Okay. In terms of Canadian-German partnership, rather than looking at the big picture, I prefer to look at the microcosm, and that is that the Inuvik satellite station facility, being a mix of Canada and Germany working together, has clearly allowed commercialization efforts between MDA and Astrium, and will generate new applications and lead to future possibilities. And that's all because of this Canada-Germany cooperation.
Great, thank you very much. We're at the end of our panel discussion. I'd like you to join me in thanking our panelists for contributing their time and their thoughts today. It's been extremely valuable. Thank you very much. And I'll pass over to Matthias now for our closing.
So thank you very much. Oopla. I almost made the German-Canadian concourse without an accident. Thank you, Daniel, for leading us through the program, for taking the leadership on this first transatlantic German-Canadian concourse. Thank you, Joseph. I can see you just joined the room again. Thanks for taking the leadership on the Gatineau side. I would like to thank our speakers and panelists. This was a very impressive program. I learned a lot about German-Canadian cooperation in space. As a German, as a Canada enthusiast working in space, I thought I should know much more about German-Canadian corporations. I didn't do before the conference or before starting planning the conference. I'm very impressed about all these opportunities that there are between Canada and Germany when it comes to space. I would like to thank you as well for your recommendations that I received in preparation for the program. I think this was very great to get that many speakers from different parts of the industry. Thanks to you, we were able to gather such a high-profile panel of speakers and panelists, and think this is already a big success. So thank you. Thanks for all the inspiration that we received through your presentation and your contributions. Thank you to the audience for asking many questions and engaging in the discussion about space cooperation between Germany and Canada. I'm sure there are many more questions to be asked. We have the opportunity to actually address more questions during the reception that we're having, at least here in Berlin. I don't know what you are organizing in Gatineau. Joseph, you're probably going for lunch together. We will go to the Astrium headquarters office, or what's called Hauptstadtbüro in just across the street, actually. So please join us walking over. I think Stefan Walter will be leading us over to the office. We're leaving here around in 5 to 10 minutes from the embassy. We'll go over to have a little glass of wine or beer and a couple of snacks, and to continue with our fruitful discussions. Thank you very much, and hopefully see you the next time.
Thank you.